In today's episode, we're talking about 5 or more common pests that you can find in your reef aquarium. So yeah, today let's just jump right into it. We're talking about common pests that you can find in your reef aquarium, and it happens to all of us. I mean, there's a lot of pests that you can get whether you quarantine or not, but there's ways that you can kind of go about trying not to introduce them in your reef aquarium. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about some solutions and ways to prevent these pests getting in your aquarium.
For sure.
Cool. So starting with the first one, Asina Starfish. So,
yeah, these guys, I almost had them in every single tank I've ever kept, ever. I don't like, they're, a lot of times they're microscopic, at first. They're tiny, you hardly see them. And sometimes you see them and they're just like one little leg. Like they're just super small sometimes. But yeah, they can hitchhike on just about anything, especially like rock, like live rock from like your local fish store, or like corals and stuff. And that's why, sometimes we recommend, dipping your corals. But sometimes the starfish can get through that dip. So sometimes it's also good to, take a visual look at your rock or your coral that you're putting in your tank, just to make sure none of these are on there. And supposedly there's a few of these Asina starfish species that are like, not like bad, that they won't affect anything. But in my personal experience, if they're in the tank, like certain things are not happy, they're not looking the greatest, and I just know that they're definitely chewing on them. So yeah, the easiest way to kind of try to avoid these is just to be very vigilant and careful when you're putting stuff into your aquarium.
Yeah, I mean, they are, I would say, probably the most common hitchhiker that you're going to get in the aquarium. And they can come in on anything. And so, yeah, like you were talking about, inspecting your corals, the coral plugs and everything is very important, especially if you don't want them in there. But in my experience, I've had these guys in every single aquarium that I've had. And the best way to get rid of them is to just physically remove them.
Absolutely.
And then, yeah, like you were talking about, there's some out there that aren't going to bother anything, but most of the time, in my experience, I find them getting on like zoanthid corals. You find them just covering up the corals. Like they're not going to be good in the end, so you might as well get them out. And you can get a harlequin shrimp.
Harlequin shrimp, bumblebee shrimp. But I mean, the only thing with those specifically, like I've always had the trouble with, like you put it in an established reef and it does take care of the problem, and then you can't catch it, like, to get it out, because they will literally starve themselves, because that's all they eat is the starfish.
Yeah, so when we had a 210-gallon aquarium, my wife, Danielle, basically, she removed, I want to say it was like over 150 of these Asina starfish. I'll have to go back and pull the video clip. But she just had a plastic container, and she just put in the work, picking them off the rock work, off the sand bed, off the glass, and just filled up that container with these little guys. So
yeah, I've done that before. I mean, they're hard to see sometimes when they're on the rock. Like they blend in really well with the like algae and coraline and stuff. They blend right in.
Yeah, because they can be really, really tiny, like 1/4 inch up to an inch, and of course they multiply by breaking themselves in. Like you can have a half of a starfish, it's going to grow new legs, and then you have
it grow right back.
So, but yeah, that's a very common, probably the most common pest, I would say.
For sure.
The next common pest, I'm sure everyone has these at some time, is Aptasia.
Yeah.
And Aptasia Anemones, once you see one, you likely have a dozen, and once you have a dozen, like it can get out of hand. I've been there with my tank. And then the solution to these guys is getting something like Aptasia RX or Joe's Juice or Aptasia or whatever. I think that's what it's called. The product that you kind of squeeze it into the mouth of the Aptasia, and they kind of implode from inside. Because scraping these guys off of the rock work doesn't work most of the time, because if you leave a little bit behind, right?
Yeah, and so when you're irritating them like that, they'll actually release more spores. into the water, causing them to like populate elsewhere. That's what they do when they're stressed out. So I definitely don't recommend, scraping at them or like picking at them, trying to get them off, because that'll just tick them off, and they do sporulate like into the water when that happens. Yeah, like Joey said, there's multiple ways to get rid of these, and a lot of the products do quite well. The only problem is once you have so many of them, it's hard to actually get all of them taken care of, because like they constantly spread, and they're going to be in nooks and crannies where you can't really see them too. The only like other options, there's a couple different fish that eat them. Like Molly Miller blunnies, I know are a good probably choice for most people, because copper bands and other butterflies that may eat them are definitely finicky eaters. But if you can find a copper band that's really fed at your local fish store, and like they feed it and it's feeding really good, that's always a good choice too if it's healthy. I mean, the biggest thing with the copper bands is getting them to eat in captivity. From my experience personally. So yeah, that's the only concern with the copper band butterfly. And now there is those Burgundia nudibranchs, and they do a great job. My only concern with those is I always feel like if you put them in a bigger tank, they kind of just get lost. Like you just kind of slowly disappear, and you don't really see them. But I've also heard of people saying like I put them in my tank and they ate all the Aptasia. They're populating like crazy. So there's just different experiences with those. But yeah, there's plenty of different options, to get rid of them. Don't panic, but when you start to see a few, definitely take action as quickly as you can.
Yeah, for sure. And like we said, this is a common pest, so you don't have to like freak out or go into panic mode like you're talking about. And peppermint shrimp can work as well. There's mixed feelings on that. Some people have luck with peppermint shrimp, some people don't. I find a combination of all these methods, and that's going to be the majority of the solution today, is a combination of things to take care of these pests.
Yes.
Because I've had plenty of success using Aptasia RX and getting in there and attacking each individual one. But then the ones that you don't see are the smaller ones that are like behind the rock work, something like a peppermint shrimp or a copper band. They're going to get in there and go to town, do work on the ones that you can't see. So, yeah, Aptasia Anemones. The next one, what do you think about bristleworms?
I don't like them. I mean, there's a lot of mixed feelings on these two in the hobby, from what I hear around. Sometimes there is like different species of these too. You can get like the big fireworms that like are heavy coral eaters, like they'll eat your coral, and then you get like the regular bristleworms. They're not like in most people's experience, they're not detrimental. They're not going to kill a bunch of stuff, but they can get out of hand. I've done maintenances and stuff like at my old work at like a retail shop, and I've seen some tanks that have thousands of these things, and they are ugly. They get big. Not that they're bothering anything technically, but there's just so many of them. They get out of hand quick. And if you don't like them in your tank, try to get rid of them. There's a bunch of different ways to get rid of them. You got like bristleworm traps. Different kinds of wrasses may go after them. Arrow crabs I've heard of that go after them as well. Coral banded shrimps even, I've heard of that. Yeah, they're just, I don't know. I don't really like them personally. I've been, grabbed like a rock and there's been a big one on it multiple times, and I get bristles in my fingers. It's never really that fun. So
yeah,
if you can avoid them, avoid them. But I mean, they are good detritivores as well, so it's kind of like but they're definitely ugly and they're annoying.
Yeah, they do help out in the sand bed, but if they're getting to like plague proportions, we're seeing like thousands of them, then yeah, definitely use the trap. I was at Skelly Fest this past week, and I was giving printed reef products away, and they have a bristleworm trap. But someone came up to me and was talking about a bristleworm trap that they made at home just using PVC pipe and putting holes in it and stuff. So you can do little homemade traps too that seem to work and draw in your bristleworms, and you can remove them that way. So I thought that was really cool. Definitely. Now, looking at bristleworms like this, I mean, they're usually pretty small in your tank. They're nothing like the nightmare fuel of this right here, a bobbit worm.
Ooh,
oh my gosh. These guys are nasty, dude. This is, I mean, it's getting close to October, Halloween time. Halloween's coming up. I figured I'd throw in a bobbit worm. These guys are crazy. They kind of burrow under the sand with their jaws.
Yeah, those things are crazy, and I've actually seen a couple of these come in.
Really?
A lot of the times, so I'll be at work usually. I always find them in pipe organ corals. I don't know why, but I'll be fragging pipe organ corals, and this huge long worm shoots out, and you could like see at the end of its mouth like its little jaws, and it's like flailing around and stuff. And I also have seen one of these in a tank at an aquarium. I can't remember what aquarium it was at, but there was like a small little cube aquarium with a bobbit worm. Pretty crazy. I didn't get to see it feed or anything, but I've seen videos online. It's pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
And you definitely don't want one of those in your tank.
Yeah. If you see one of these guys in your tank, definitely get it out.
Tear the tank down.
Yeah. I don't think
I don't think you're gonna be able to get it out without destroying your tank, because those things, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and they're pretty big too. I don't think this is a common problem in the hobby, but I have seen some videos online, and some people have them in smaller tanks, like you were talking about. And like, man, if I had this, total takedown, get this guy out.
I mean, can you imagine if that thing like grabbed your finger? I mean, look at like it's almost like teeth on like the jaws. Like, that would hurt.
I feel like that would destroy your finger.
Yeah.
I want to say there's a Brave Wilderness episode where they did something like that. I can't remember if it was a bobbit worm or like a centipede or something. It could have been a centipede. But yeah, they do all kinds of crazy stuff like that.
Weird.
But yeah, I just figured I'd throw in the bobbit worm because of October, and it's just nightmare fuel. Like, this thing is crazy.
Definitely creepy.
But before we get to the next one, we're actually going to jump into a scientific segment.
So for our scientific segment, we got a cool tang that is probably one of the most common tangs in the hobby, but not at the same time. We got the yellow tang. One of my favorite tangs. It's just super vibrant, and I think that's why it's just, everyone wants one. And the unfortunate situation now, and I think we've talked about this in past episodes, is you can't really get them unless you get the captive bred ones. Now here shortly in a couple segments, I'll be sharing about an article about some, and we'll talk about that shortly. But yeah, just the sheer yellow color. You don't really see solid yellow in the aquarium industry. And a yellow tang, they stay relatively small. You can keep them about like a 75 gallon. And they're beautiful. But like I said, you can't really get them anymore unless you get the captive bred, which a lot of times in my experience from hearing from other people and stuff, they do quite well. I've never actually kept one, but it'd be nice. This is the first tang I've ever bought. This was my first tang when I was younger, when I first started getting into the hobby, and I remember paying like $30 for it. Now for a wild yellow tang, you're gonna pay $500 to $1,000. Like, that's not even exaggerating. Like, you just can't get them anymore. It's unfortunate. But we'll see what happens with Hawaii.
Yeah, and then buying them captive bred, you're looking at what was it? We talked last time, 165 for a captive bred one.
Yeah.
But then they're coming in pretty small, like 1.5 2 inches.
Yeah, like, kid you not.
Yeah, like really tiny.
Definitely. And I mean, my only thing, like, I love captive bred and that people are doing and everything. It's great for this industry, and I think it's the future of this industry. But I almost feel like I've kept captive bred clowns before, no problem and stuff. But some of the other fish, I feel like, they're raised in such sterile systems when they're young. Like, they have, got to understand, like, they're all heavily treated. There's no bacterias or anything really in the systems. And then you throw them into, like, a system. And if you have any sort of like bacteria or fungus or even like disease, a lot of times they catch it. And I'd say to quarantine them, but I mean, they're already practically quarantined because they're coming from pretty much sterile systems. So that's, the issue that I've always had with captive bred fish. But other than that, let's move on.
Yeah. Awesome. So going back up to the next common pest, and I've dealt with these guys. Let me know if you've dealt with these guys, the red planaria flatworms.
Yes.
These are small little brown flatworms that have like a red dot on them. You might see a couple one day pop up on your glass, and you're like, "Oh, what's that?" Those are kind of neat. There's only a couple of them, and then next thing you know, you have thousands of these guys
Yeah.
everywhere. And I mean it when I say thousands. I probably have thousands of them in the 125. Dude, they were everywhere, and they can come in on corals, on your frag plug.
Anything
They can
really.
come in. Now I mostly see them come in on like mushroom corals,
Okay.
because that's where they're like hidden the most, or that's where like they're not really noticed because they're actually on top of. So we got a fuzzy mushroom coral, and they were all in between and on the mushroom, but you couldn't really tell. You couldn't really see them unless you inspect it closely. So that's why it's important to inspect your corals before you put them in your tank, and actually like maybe get a magnifying glass or something and take a
Yeah.
look at this, because even with like nudibranchs and stuff, the eggs can be really small, but with flatworms, they'll blend right into the corals.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're definitely no fun to deal with. I think almost if you're like an experienced reef keeper, you've probably dealt with them once or twice. 'Cause, I mean, they come and go here and there, and there's a couple different ways to get rid of them. There's certain wrasses that are known to go after them. There's also certain invertebrates that are known to go after them. There's this I think it's called the blue velvet sea slug is known to eat those. Those are really cool. But like I said, the only thing with nudibranchs is once they like eat their food source, they end up either dying or vice versa. Yeah, I mean, they're definitely no fun to deal with because, I mean, I've had them pop up. You'll see like a couple on the glass, and then like 2 days later you come in and the whole glass, like they're just all over. Like there's thousands, like you said. They populate very quickly. So, I mean, if you see them, you definitely want to try to, like, make a game plan, try to figure out how you're going to attack that as quickly as possible. Just like with any of these pests, pretty much. Just try to, take action quick, because if you're like, oh, it'll be fine, there's just a couple right now, it's going to get out of hand pretty quick.
Yeah, and with flatworms, they can just become like, they're not really, in the beginning, initially, like with mushroom corals, they're not necessarily harming the mushroom coral. I believe they're kind of like, I guess they're kind of eating like the mucus on top of the mushroom coral, but in the beginning it's not really hurting them until there's a bunch of them, and then you're blocking out photosynthesis. And it's causing the coral to go downhill, and you'll start seeing the mushroom like shrinking and just not doing well. So hopefully before that point, but even if you do see that, you can pull that mushroom coral out, put it into Revive. I know using Two Little Fishies Revive. In the last podcast, we showed a video clip. There you go. There it is right there. That stuff works. That will knock out some flatworms.
It takes out flatworms.
Yeah, the red planaria ones, you can siphon them out. You can use flatworm exit. That tends to work really well, but what that does is it's going to like lift all of those flatworms up in your tank, and as soon as these flatworms die, they give off their toxins, so it's going to go into the water, so you got to get them out of there quickly, and then do a large water change with that. But yeah, if you start noticing them, try to get them out. Use flatworm exit before they get to be billions of them in your tank.
Absolutely, for sure. So we have another little segment for you guys. We're going to jump into the oddity of the week. Pretty excited to share this one with you guys. I actually have a couple of these orange Bertulas on the 75-gallon Caribbean tank. They're really unique. You don't see them too often. They come out at night. They're nocturnal. So a lot of times, divers aren't out at night looking for these. So a lot of the times when they're being collected, and both of these specific species are from the Caribbean, just so everyone's aware. A lot of times when they're collecting flame cardinal fish that are under little ledges and stuff. You'll find these sometimes. The orange Brula seems to be a little more popular. We get those in more often, but the black Brula comes from a little bit more deeper water, so you don't see those as often. Yeah, they're super cool. It's a different, unique fish, and if you're looking for something strange or different, something that you've never seen before, these are pretty cool, and they're really easy to keep. Mine was eaten like a couple minutes after I put it in the tank. It kind of hangs out under this little ledge and comes out and eats some ISIS shrimp, so super cool.
That's cool. Yeah, they do look interesting. They look like eels. Yeah, and they swim
really,
kind of like an eel.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're really small too. I mean, the one I have right now is like 2 inches. They don't get very big. So that black one looks big in the picture. Well, like you can kind of see here, it looks like this picture's taken under a ledge because you can see the coral banded shrimp in the back left on the bottom there.
Oh yeah, I can see them.
Like a lot of the reefs in like Palm Beach and stuff, like you go down and it's like a ledge. You go underneath and you can look way back, see a bunch of coral bandeds, flame cardinals, and sometimes you'll see these too. So super cool, kind of different. So there you go.
Nice. All right. So I think this is number 5. We briefly mentioned this, but zoanthid eating nudibranchs. These guys can come in under coral frags unnoticed. They can be underneath the zoa polyps. There could be eggs on your frag that you may not notice because they're super small.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, if you do see them, you can try to scrape the eggs off because dipping doesn't get to the eggs, right?
Exactly. Yeah, so this is also why we recommend, dipping your corals ahead of time, but that is not going to kill the eggs. You got to keep that in mind. The eggs are protected. They have a shell around them. So if I always want to get frags and different colonies and stuff, I inspect them very close. Now you're probably not going to catch everything all the time, but take a good look at your corals and rock that you're putting into the tank because the eggs can sneak in and you may think oh, I dipped that. How is there stuff on it? Well, there's probably eggs somewhere and then they hatched and obviously repopulated. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Take a good look at your stuff before you put it in your tank. That's the best thing I have for you there.
Yeah, and if you notice that, well, if you can, I know it's going to be really tricky with zoanthids, but if they are on a piece of rubble or something that's glued to the plug and they're not just overgrowing the plug, you could probably remove them if you see eggs on the plug, and then
for sure
you won't introduce the eggs. I know it's kind of tricky with zoas. Especially if you buy a frag that's covered with them. But yeah, still dip them anyways. Still inspect them and try to scrape those eggs off if you see them.
Now, with that said, we'll hop into a couple different articles we have for you guys to share with you.
That's right.
What's going on?
Look at that article because you brought the yellow tang to our attention, but there was a reason why he was the scientific segment, and this article right here. Talk us through it.
Yeah, so RVS is a collecting group over in Philippines. They have multiple other different locations too. But I was just I scroll through Reef Builders almost every day, just seeing kind of what's going on, what's up, and I also write for them as well. And I saw this picture of this yellow tang, and I saw it on Facebook the other day. I didn't really think much of it, and I was saying they're getting these out of the Philippines now, which I think is pretty crazy. You don't hardly ever hear about them coming from Philippines. I've heard of them coming from Japan before, and also Marshall Islands on occasion. And there's also some other cool Antheus and some other fish, but it's pretty cool just seeing yellow tangs from different areas other than Hawaii kind of popping up. Obviously, they're going to be quite expensive because they're rare over in those areas. But yeah, just kind of cool to see that happen, like a true wild yellow tang. Pretty cool. I haven't seen those in a while.
Yeah, and this is what does it say? 5,325 miles to the west of Hawaii.
Yeah, it's a long ways.
Now, do you see them becoming overfished and stuff similar to what's going on with Hawaii with bans eventually here too? Because I mean,
not necessarily. A lot of those. So that specific supplier is very good, about catching these fish well and correctly, and how they don't use cyanide. They don't they net everything, and they're very careful with how they do everything. So I don't think they're technically being overfished. Now, there's other companies that may be just not caring and just grabbing whatever they can. And I typically, personally, don't necessarily like a lot of the Philippine fish because a lot of those suppliers do cyanide their fish. You know, they go over the reef, they throw all the cyanide out, and it actually stuns the fish. And the only problem with it, there's more than one problem with that, but a lot of the problems with the Philippine fish is that stuff will attack their liver, and over time, the liver will go bad. So a lot of the times, you know, specific fish from Philippines may come in, they look great for a while, and then they just randomly die. And that's a lot of the time
you're basically poisoning them. You're basically poisoning
quite
them.
Literally.
So they float, so they're stunned, so you can get
Gotcha.
there. And get
that's what they do. It's sad, but that's what a lot of them do. So it's unfortunate. But what can you do? So I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, looking at this though, like you were saying, this part of the article is teaching them how to scuba, how to scuba dive safely, proper decompression, teaching them the proper skills to use nets to collect the aquarium fish. So that offers a more sustainable livelihood for the fish, and they provide all the equipment necessary to operate in a safe way, like you were saying, which is really cool.
Yeah, pretty crazy. So there you go.
Awesome. And that's RVS Fish World Inc.
Yes. We got the product of the week is TDO Chrome Boost. It's probably one of my favorite pellets ever invented. It's topped with this beautiful algae that, you know, flamingos actually use to get their bright pink color. So, I mean, I've seen this on multiple occasions. You know, people start feeding this to like the regular Ocellaris clownfish or any fish in general that has like red or orange. And the color just over time, like over a month or so, gets super vibrant. You could obviously see changes. It's well known. And this is just a highly nutritious pellet. I'll try to get you a close-up look. A lot of you guys have probably seen this before. It's good stuff. It's in almost every fish store you probably go to. Super nice. There's a lot of different sizes, extra small all the way to like extra large. So, yeah, check it out. If you haven't used it, give it a shot. It's good stuff.
Yeah, if you want to boost your fish color, there you go. TDO, Reef Nutrition. And word of the week. Maybe not, but word of the week: carotenoids. I love that word. That's carotenoids. It's in TDO, helping with your fish color. But yeah, I have one more pest that I want to bring up, and this is the bonus pest. These are called pyramid snails.
Ooh.
So pyramid snails are tiny little, really, really tiny snails that if you get Maxima clam, Dorasa clam, any clam really, and you start noticing your clam is not open or it's not doing well, it could be pyramid snails. They will come in on your clam, you won't notice them, and they will eat the foot of the clam, and then your clam dies because of these guys. Yeah. So what do you do?
I mean, with these, take a good look at your clam before you put it in your tank.
Yeah.
Like we've said all this whole episode, I mean, just take a look at the stuff that you're putting in your tank. Be very diligent and take your time. And because I mean, once you put it in your tank, it's probably going to be pretty permanent. So you want to make sure that it's the healthiest it possibly could be. So.
Yeah, I mean, there are some 6-line and green wrasses that may eat these snails. But if you take the time to inspect your clam first, you can use a toothbrush and you can scrub off the little pyramid snails and get them out of there, because they can definitely become a plague proportion and just eat that clam basically from the inside out, well, from the foot, from the bottom up. And they're practically invisible. So definitely, if you get a clam, anywhere you get a clam, make sure you inspect it.
Definitely. For sure.
One of the products I have in honor of the bristleworm trap. So this is made by Printed Reef. You can go ahead and go to printedreef.com/TheCoralReefTalk, and you can pick up a bristleworm trap if you need it. But what's really cool about this version of their bristleworm trap is that they have the clear covering so you can see what's going on inside. And then it has a bunch of different sized holes all the way around it. So what that's going to do is you put your food on the inside, and then your bristleworms are going to go through these holes, and they have small openings on the inside. So hopefully they get in there and start eating that food you put in. You notice them, and you can take the whole box out and remove the bristleworms. So
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool little trap, and you can save 10% at printedreef.com. But yeah, we talked about pests, so I thought I would bring up a product that helps with pests. So, but man, how are your reef tanks doing? How are all your aquariums doing?
Everything's doing good.
Through it,
I
yeah.
cannot complain. Yeah. Stonefish is doing good. Eats a lot of food.
Okay, nice.
Everything's doing really good. So, how about yourself?
Yeah. Everything is well. All right. So, Skellyfest, first of all, Skellyfest, amazing show. If you ever have a chance to get out to Miami, go check it out. It was a lot of fun. We set up a table there, brought some T-shirts and some books. Just hung out, met people, talked with people. Just had a really good time. Checked out a whole bunch of different corals. Skellyfest was a lot of fun, but being at Skellyfest took me away from the tank for the weekend. So
yeah,
of course, something always tends to happen when you go on vacation or you leave your tank for a little bit. And I got back to one of my torch corals was in the sand all weekend. Just flipped over.
No.
So that guy did not make it. And then the other one had some brown jelly disease going on. So I took him out, dipped him, put him through some iodine solution, put him back in the tank. So far, the other heads of that one is doing fine.
Okay.
So far.
That's good to hear.
But yeah.
Bummer.
But other than that, I mean, the green hair algae is getting a lot better. Did some water changes the other day. Removed a whole bunch more green hair algae. The sand bed's cleaning up. The scully coral is looking great.
Sweet.
I should probably knock on wood or something because I feel like, dude, sometimes every time I mention a coral, something happens to the coral that I talk about.
Yeah, it's I don't know what it is. Same here. Like you talk about something specifically, and then it starts to, I don't know. It's like they don't like being talked about or something.
Yeah, like is that a reef hobby curse? Like I don't know.
I don't know because it's crazy because I feel like sometimes if I just leave my tank be and just not even think about the tank, like the tank does amazing when I'm actually paying attention and going grinding on the tank and stuff. Like it's just it's so weird. Like and Julian had said this before too. Like if you pay attention to a specific coral or I'm like admiring a specific coral for an extended period of time, it just does. Like or something happens to it. Like it's always something. It's super weird.
Yeah, it's almost like when you I don't know, when you tell a kid, like a kid picks up like a bug or something and you tell it like don't name that bug, you'll get attached to it. It's like don't say your coral's doing good out loud because the moment you do that, it's downhill. I don't know.
Right. Crazy.
But yeah, other than that, man, everything seems to be doing well.
Awesome.
What else? Oh, I've started utilizing the T5 bulbs a lot more.
Okay.
So I just replaced the T5 bulbs over the tank. And I am getting a new LED light for the tank soon. Hopefully it comes in like 2 weeks. So I'll give you guys an update in like 2 weeks once that light comes in. But that's going to be cool just to get a little more actinic or some blue light towards the end, because right now the T5 bulbs are in that blue spectrum. Like I have the 80 watt actinic. I also have the True Blue from ATI as well, and like a Coral Plus, which is a little more purple. But like to the naked eye, it doesn't seem blue. So picking up some LED lights to give a little bit more blue color towards like the end of the night. So I may ramp it up, do like blue in the morning, blue towards the evening. That's what I used to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm excited about that, and I'll update you guys in a couple weeks once that comes in. But yeah, I think other than that, I have not started to build the desktop tank yet. So if you were listening to the previous podcast and you're going to build this tank with me, you can go ahead and pick up the list of stuff for the tank build. I'll leave that in the description below as well as the products we talked about to help with the pest or to color up your fish. But yeah, what else do you have? Anything else to add to the conversation before we say farewell?
I don't think so. Hopefully everyone was safe during that storm.
Yeah. Yep. A hurricane came by. That was crazy. A lot of people without power, a lot of people now
without homes.
Yeah, without power, without homes.
Like literally, it's
nothing. So
like I've seen videos and pictures online of like, up in Steinhatchee or whatever, and even up through, the Carolinas and stuff, like homes just gone, like all the flooding.
Yeah, the Carolinas
the
are
storm
crazy.
surge. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if you've seen pictures of like, St. Pete Beach or Clearwater Beach, like all that sand just washed over the road, and it's crazy. My boss actually lives on the Intercoastal, and he had, I think, 2 to 3 foot in his house. Like the water rose, and it was in his house, and
yeah, that's insane.
Crazy.
Well, like Carolinas, like dams were breaking and flooding like crazy. Tons of roads closed, tons of homes gone. So prayers going out to all of those families. My father-in-law is actually out there in the thick of it, like bringing stuff to, he's part of one of the relief programs that's bringing stuff out up there, like North Florida and stuff. So it's really cool.
Awesome. That's good. Sweet.
But yeah, so that is our episode for today. So just remember, inspect your corals, inspect your fish, quarantine if you can. If you can't, make sure you are scraping those corals, dipping those corals, getting them in your aquarium, or buying them from a reputable source.
Absolutely.
So you can know what you're getting your hands on. But thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. And we will see you in the next one.
See you.